Hello, 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 and welcome to our Gobble Till You Wobble cookie class. I'm super excited for this class, but I'm always excited for every class. So we are going to get started today. I want you guys to grab your kits. So you're going to open up your kit, and I'm going to show you what you should have inside. You have your little cookie kit card, which you won't need anymore, but you'll have your cookies. You'll have your little container with your sprinkles and all the other little goodies that we need. You're going to have all of your icing. So you should have 5 bags of icing. And you will have your little packet that has your practice sheet and your scribe and your extra bags and your picture in there. So go ahead and move your icing and your cookies kind of out of the way and your sprinkles, and pull out your practice sheet, your scribe, and your class picture. Okay, and then I'm just going to leave my extra bags in my bag just in case I need them. So in your little cup, you don't want to take any of this stuff out yet, but you should have a Starburst. You'll have a piece of candy corn, a little pumpkin transfer, and a candy corn transfer, as well as your sprinkles. So we're just going to set those off to the side for the moment. All right, and we are going to start with our practice sheet. So if you haven't already, you want to make sure that you have a pair of scissors, and you want to just grab a napkin or a paper towel, and if you can just wet it just a little bit to help keep your scribe and your icing bags clean. That's super helpful because icing sticks to icing, so we don't want it to stick to itself. We want it to do what it's supposed to do and go where we want it to go. Okay, we're going to grab our tan icing, and when you are holding your icing to cut the bag, you want to feel that seam, and you always want to make sure that it's pointed up towards the ceiling. And I'm just going to flatten the tip of my bag out just like that, and I will cut a small hole off of the tip. So my goal for when I cut this hole, I want it to cover up this line. If it is not covering up this line, you want to cut your bag just a little bit more, just a teeny tiny bit, because you don't want to go too much more or your hole will be too large, and it's really hard to control your icing when you have a really large hole. When I hold my icing bag, I want to hold it in the palm of my hand, and I just want to gently wrap my fingers around it. And I also want to use my thumb and my forefinger to help keep that bag closed, because even though it's closed with the tape, your icing can still squeeze up here and it can make a really big mess, which we don't want to happen. So you're just going to use your thumb and your forefinger, and you're just going to gently curl your fingers around your piping bag. And I'm going to just gently tap down on the paper and give my bag just a little bit of pressure and let that icing almost fall out of the bag. And when I get towards the end of my line, I'm just going to release my pressure and tap down. Let me go in a little bit closer on this. So when you are doing this, if you are getting little broken lines like this, that means that you're probably not giving your icing bag enough pressure. However, it could also be that your icing bag, the hole is too small. So the first thing I want you to do is just try to give it a little bit more pressure. And if you're getting a solid line like mine, you can just keep your bag the way that it is. If you are getting, if you're still having the broken lines, go ahead and just flatten the tip of that icing bag out again. I like to do it on my paper towel. Just flatten the tip out again and just gently cut just a teeny tiny bit more off of the top. And you can also test it out on your paper towel or on your placemat if you have one. When I go to do my lines or my outlines, if I'm getting squiggly lines like this, I'm probably giving my bag too much pressure. So you just want to release your pressure just a little bit, and you will have a nice straight line. So just release that pressure, remember, at the end of the line. So for our little squiggly lines, I'm just going to tap down, lift up just a little bit, and gently direct that icing almost with it's a little bit of the movement of my wrist and a little bit of my arm kind of moving back and forth. and just let that icing fall. Again, I'm barely giving my icing bag any pressure. And when I get towards the end, I'm just going to release my pressure and tap down. Let's try our circle and our heart. So circles, you know, if you've taken my classes before, that the key is just to go slow. Same thing, just tap down, gently giving my bag some pressure. And on the circle, I'm just gently directing that line, but I'm always looking ahead of where I want that icing line to fall so that I can direct it in the right area. Release your pressure and tap down. And then with our heart, we're going to tap down, just lift up. Again, I'm looking ahead where I want that icing to fall. When I get towards this corner, I'm just going to release my pressure and tap down. So by tapping down and lifting up like this, that's going to allow us to get a sharp corner. And I don't think that we have any sharp corners on our cookies today, but that's how you get those sharp corners. Okay, so if you are done with your practice sheet, if you're not, you can just pause the video and keep working on it and then come back. I'm gonna toss that away. I'm going to grab my cookies, and you'll notice on your cookies that they all have the general outlines that you all are gonna need to create these cookies. Okay, so I have my little turkey, I have my pumpkin pie, and my mashed potato bowl. We are going to start with our turkey. So the first thing I want you to do is, in your little container, I want you to grab that piece of candy corn, because we are going to put that in as soon as we flood the turkey's face. And I actually forgot to do something with his eyes, so let me fix that really quick. Okay, so if you noticed, I didn't have my eyes on there. You guys will have your eyes on there. And the reason I didn't have the eyes on mine, originally I was going to make a transfer for you guys just to plop onto the cookies, but then I figured it would be a little bit more fun for you guys to be able to put the little eyes, the pupils of the eyes, wherever you wanted them. So I actually forgot to put that on my cookie. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to continue with my tan icing. Let me go in a little bit closer for you. I am going to just outline the body right here of the turkey and around this area, because we want to leave that open so that we can put our white icing in there. So I'm going to start at this bottom corner right here. I like to start at corners. It makes it easier to connect the lines when you come back around. I'm just going to give gentle pressure and follow the outline that's on my cookie. I'm going to tap down right here, and then I'm going to tap again on here, and I'm just going slow, and I'm just going to follow these little loops right here, back around and down. If you find that that's too hard, you can just follow this outer outline. That's not a problem at all. You're still going to get the same effect. I'm going to touch back right there, come around, and I'm just going to slowly go around that corner since it's a soft little edge. There we go. Tap down. And then I'm going to do this area of the eyes. So I'm going to start right here at this inside corner and lift up, slowly go around and follow that outline, and tap down. You can go ahead and push this cookie out of the way. You can use your scribe to gently push it out of the way. And I'm going to bring over my pumpkin pie slice. So we are going to outline this outer part right here for the crust of the pie. This, you can start either down here or at the top. I'm going to start at the top and work my way around. So I'm just going to tap down right here, lift up, and come around and just tap down. The other thing that tapping down allows you to do, it helps you kind of regain control of your icing if you feel like it's just doing whatever it wants to do and it's coming out. And if you mess up like this, that's not a big deal. Just use your scribe and scrape it off and wipe your scribe off on your paper towel. And then I'll go back in and I will just reconnect those lines. Just like this. Tap down. Bring it. I'm I'm going to go this way and bring it in just like that. And then I'm going to come over here and go along the bottom. Again, I'm just giving gentle pressure. And the one thing I actually forgot to show you guys, if you have a shaky hand or you just need to stabilize your hand for whatever reason, I usually 99% of the time I'm always holding my wrist or using my fingers kind of against my wrist like this when I'm going around a cookie, just like this, because it helps stabilize that hand. Now if I don't have it, you can see I'm a little shaky today, but if you are able to stabilize your hand, it helps a whole lot, and it gives you more control when you are icing those cookies. Okay, I'm a little awkward right now, don't do that like I just did. So you go around this way and come up. Now if you didn't finish this one, just go ahead and pause the video and come back when you're ready. I'm going to push this guy away. I'm going to bring in my mashed potato bowl, and I'm only going to outline this bottom part right here. So same thing, I'm just going to make sure my tip of my icing bag is clean, and I'm going to start right over here at the edge. Gently give my icing pressure, bring it around and up, and then follow these wavy lines. Just like that. Okay, so now I'm going to push this one out of the way. Again, if I'm going fast, which I know I'm going a little bit faster than I do in class, just pause the video until you get caught up where you are ready to go to the next step. I'm going to bring my pie back down, and I'm going to grab my orange icing. You'll notice with your icing bags that some of these have a really long tail. You can cut some of that tail off. You just don't want to go too close to the tape because your icing will squeeze out. So I'm just going to cut it off kind of up here so that there's still a tail on there, but it's not so much in my way. And you can do that with all of your bags. Again, just remember not to go too far down. So I'm going to take that icing. That seam is pointed up towards the ceiling. I'm just going to gently flatten that tip out. And I'm going to cut about the same size hole as we did for our tan because we are still outlining. I'm going to give that bag a little squeeze on my paper towel. And I'm going to outline this whole area, even the area where the whipped cream is going to go. I'm going to start right here at this bottom corner and just come all the way up. And if you need to tap down to regain your control of your icing, you can do that. Tap down all the way around, and then I'm going to connect it right here. Then I will go right here and just follow this line that kind of divides that slice, just like that. Gently move your cookie out of the way, especially now that we have all of the background on that outlined. We want to be really careful. I'm going to come back to my turkey, and I'm going to outline this top part first. So you're going to grab that kind of like maroon color, crimson. I'm going to cut the top of my bag a little bit. Same process, look for that seam, flatten the tip of your icing bag out, and just give it a small little snip. And I am going to just outline this top little feather. Just follow that line and then the outer edge of the cookie. And I did not go all the way to the edge on that. Let me fix that. I'm just going to push it out a little bit. And remember that your icing around the edges of your cookie doesn't have to be perfect. And when I say perfect, I mean like it doesn't have to be a true like straight line, because you will be covering it up. So don't focus so much on that outer icing edge, because we are going to cover it up with icing. Okay, so let's push this guy out of the way. We're going to bring our mashed potatoes back over, and I'm going to outline this top part of the bowl. I'm going to start at the top lip where the mashed potatoes are, Just going to tap down right here, follow this across very slowly, tap down right here, and then I'm going to connect it over here. I'm going to follow that edge of that bowl but come down. And the same thing over here. You can also outline along the edge of this if you'd like to, but you want to make sure if you're doing this that your icing is actually touching that other icing line. But you also want to be really careful because it's still wet. So you don't have to do that. I just want to show you if you've taken the classes a few times and you want to try a little bit of a different technique, you can try doing that, but you do not need to do this wavy line right here if you don't want to. If you want to try it, you can. If you don't like how it looks, you can just scrape it off and re-outline that cookie. Let's bring our turkey back in, and we are going to do these little orange feathers on him. So I'm going to grab my orange icing again, and I'm going to start right here, just being gentle against that icing because we just piped it and it's still really wet. And I'm just going to make a small curve to bring that in. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. And just for the sake of filming so that you guys can see, my hands are a little bit different than they would be if I was showing you guys in person or if I was decorating on my own. So if you need to turn your cookie or do anything like that while you're outlining or flooding, please do that. I'm just trying to keep it as straight as possible so that you guys can see what I'm doing. Go ahead and grab your yellow icing. I'm going to cut that tail of that again, and same exact thing, that seam of that bag facing up towards the ceiling. Just going to flatten that out and give it a small little cut. And I'm going to outline just those two feathers. So I'm going to tap down right here, come back around, and just gently tap that orange line. I'm going to start up here, I guess. Just letting that icing fall and tap down. Are you guys ready for the best part? We're going to start decorating. So if you still have really wet icing outlines, just go ahead and wait maybe like 30 seconds to a minute, and then we are going to go back. These icing lines around your turkey should already be dry, but if they're not, if you still feel like they're a little wet, just hold on and let those crust up a little bit. I'm going to come back to my tan icing, and I'm going to cut my bag just a little bit larger. I don't want to go too much because this is the largest area that we have on our cookie, and that's not really that big of an area. And then we also have our pumpkin pie in the bottom of our bowl, but we don't need a really big hole. So since we have those smaller areas, by keeping our hole on our bag a little bit smaller, it gives us more control to get that icing to go where we want. So I'm just going to cut it just a little bit bigger, not a whole lot at all. All right, I'm just going to squeeze some out on my napkin. I'm going to start up here at the little hair area of the turkey, or the feathers of the face, and I'm just going to give gentle pressure and push that icing up against my outline. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you are, again, holding the tip of that icing in or on your cookie. You want it in the icing, whereas when we were outlining, you were lifting up and away from the cookie. This time we want our icing we want it to just get full and puffy, so you want to keep your icing bag pretty close, if not touching your cookie. And when I'm doing this, I'm just giving a little jiggle as I'm going around, and that helps my icing to settle as I'm working. Okay, and then I'm going to come up here and just connect this area because I don't want those edges to dry out before I get back up to them. Okay, and just push that icing onto my outline. You can see that my outline is disappearing, like I told you that we were going to flood that around on top. And when you are going along, if you can still see your cookie, if you're flooding like this and you get over here, you can still see your cookie, that means you're not giving your cookie enough icing. So you want to go back and you want to give that more icing. And when you go to jiggle your cookie, if you still need to jiggle it out a little bit, if you feel like your icing is not jiggling and it's not like starting to settle onto itself and be smooth, you probably are not giving your cookie still enough icing. So you want to move quickly because royal icing does crust up pretty quickly, and just give it a little bit more of the icing. And you want to grab right away, you want to grab your little candy corn. And if you look at your picture, his nose or his beak is right up against the edge of those eyes. So I'm just going to plop that right on my cookie and just gently press down. I don't want to press super hard because I don't want to push this icing over the edge. Just like that. And when you are done with that one, you can pause the video if you need to, or you can move along with me right now. So you're going to push this one out of the way very gently and bring your pumpkin pie piece or slice back over, and we're going to flood the crust of this one. Again, we're not going to cut our bag any bigger. We're going to keep it where it was. I'm going to turn my cookie just a little bit, and I'm going to start up here at this top edge. Again, I'm just wiggling and jiggling my icing bag as I move along to help that icing settle. And I'm just going to kind of go back and forth and fill it in. And see that little mistake I made right there? It's not a big deal because we're covering it up with icing and nobody will ever see it. And you see how those little areas that are kind of still lumpy, they're starting to settle, but if they have not settled by the time I get back around, I'm just going to give my cookie a little poke and jiggle it out just a little bit. So just jiggle this icing and make sure you're giving it enough icing so that it will jiggle out, and just fill in these little areas. Get over here, and I'm going to give my cookie a little jiggle. You can see that area has not all the way, it's a little hard to see on the camera, but it hasn't settled out all the way. But now it looks pretty good, and then I have a little bubble right here, so I'm going to pop that with my scribe. Just give that a little jiggle on the surface of the icing to help that settle. Here we go. And I'm just going to gently push this over to the side. I'm going to bring my mashed potatoes over to me, and then I'm going to do this part of the bowl right now, the bottom part. So when I go, I'm just going to push that icing again up against the edge of that outline. And this, on the inside of the cookie, it's a little bit easier because I don't have to worry about my icing overflowing off the edge of the cookie. Which reminds me, I forgot to tell you guys what happens if that does happen to you and your icing starts to overflow. So if your icing does start to overflow along the edge, you're just going to grab your scribe, and I will show you that in just 1 second. And you are going to just scrape the edge of your cookie to get that extra icing off. And then if you need to, you can jiggle the edge of your icing to get it to lie smooth again. But the trick to this is that you want to move very quickly because your icing is going to start to set up, and we don't want it to set up before you do that because it'll leave little crack marks in your icing. So just give that a little jiggle. And if it's not jiggling down all the way, you could just use your scribe to kind of jiggle that. And then I will go back in and just jiggle it again. And just jiggle that surface area to help that lie down. Again, you can pop any bubbles with your scribe, give a little jiggle. Okay, so if your icing does happen to go over the side, you can use either end of this stick. So you can come along with your scribe straight up and down and just scrape the edge to help get that icing back on there. Or you can use the pointy part of your stick and just scrape it along, and then just use your scribe to jiggle that back in. Okay, at this point, we are ready to go back up and start flooding the top area of our turkey, his top feather. So I'm going to bring that back down, and you can pause if you're not ready to go on to this part. I'm going to grab my crimson maroon icing, and I'm going to start filling in this area. I'm going to start right up against here on my turkey because my turkey is still really wet, but I also want to stay in this area just because I feel like it's easier to go, because you have to be careful right here. It's easier to do that area first, and then you can go along the edge where you don't have to worry so much about hitting that icing because it's still really fresh. And you can always, if you have a little fan at home, or you have a dehydrator or a just a fan or a dehydrator, you can put your cookies in that for a couple of minutes before you move on to the next step, which is what I actually do when I'm decorating cookies. And that will help your icing crust over a little bit more quickly so that you can move on to the next step and not have to worry about your icing being so wet up against each other. I'm going to give this a little jiggle. And I didn't cut my hole any larger because we are, like I said, we're working on those smaller areas. So I don't want to go super big on these holes. I'm just going to make a little jiggle in here. And you can also use your scribe to pull your icing kind of out to the edge. And I just make little tiny circles to pull it. And once it pulls onto that outer edge of your outline, it kind of grips it. It's like a little, like a dam holding up water. So it just kind of grips onto it and it won't let it go over as long as you haven't overfilled your icing. If you've overfilled your icing, you can fix that though with your scribe like I showed you. Right? Little jiggle. And then I'm going to stay on this cookie, but I'm going to grab my yellow and I'm going to do the yellow feathers. I'm going to keep my bag the same size again. I'm just going to go up here and then I'm going to go back against that edge that's already really wet. So you just want to be really careful right here to not poke into the tan of the turkey face. And just come around, jiggling that icing, and then filling that area in. Just like that. Just going to pull that out a little bit. Give it another little jiggle. I have a couple of air bubbles that I'm going to pop. I'm going to turn my cookie just a little bit and go right up against this edge. And I'm just going to go back and forth this time on this side. And if you've come to class or you've taken any of my other Kits Home and Decorated online with the YouTube videos, you know that I really like to go back and forth. I actually prefer going back and forth with my icing because it helps keep that free edge of the icing from drying out. Sometimes when you have a larger cookie and you are going in circles or all the way around the cookie and working from the outer area to the inner, your icing can dry out and it makes it a little bit harder to get your icing to settle when it's kind of going up against that crusty area. So I really like to work kind of back and forth, which I'll show you more of exactly what I'm talking about when I get back to the pumpkin cookie. So we're going to leave this guy alone and let him crust up a little bit more. I'm just going to gently push him out of the way. And I'm going to bring back my mashed potato bowl. So now I want you guys to grab your cups and pull out the rest of your little pieces that are in here. So you should have your Starburst, your little pumpkin, your little piece of candy corn, and then there's also some little black balls in here, and those are going to be for the eyes of our turkey. So you just want to pull those out and just set them off to the side inside of your lid. You'll have at least 4 of them in there, so you can kind of look at them and see which ones are the same size, or if you want them to be different sizes, you can use one big one, one small one. So we're going to use these on the edge of our bowl as soon as we get the icing flooded on that. So I'm just going to put those out of the way. I'll leave my sprinkles right here, and I'm going to flood this top edge of my bowl. Come down and around, just pushing that icing up onto that outline. And if you didn't do this outline, you are just going to kind of push it just like we did on the turkey, just up against that edge of the icing. And when you're working like this, if you look at your practice picture, the way that we get those separations in the different areas is by letting our cookies crust over. So obviously if we're in class, or if you're just watching this video all the way through and you're not letting those set up for a few minutes, then your icing has more of a tendency to flow together than if you were to let it kind of crust over and go back to it. So if you want to have those really separate sections, you can just let your icing dry for a few more minutes in between before you go on to those next steps. So I'm just going to give this a little jiggle. And I'm really excited to show you our holiday class. It's called Santa's Cookie Crew, and I want to show you towards the end of this what they look like. I'm really excited to do Santa's beard with you guys, because we get to kind of ruffle up our icing to make his beard look fluffy and, I guess furry is not the right description. Fuzzy, fluffy and fuzzy. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my sprinkles. You can just dip into here and just pinch it a little bit, and you're just gonna sprinkle them over your bowl on that edge. And if this area is still really wet, you just want to be careful that you're not getting them on that bottom part of the bowl, unless you would like to have them on the bottom part of the bowl. If you want them on that bottom part, you can do that. So that's what that one looks like. Now I'm going to bring my pumpkin pie over, and I'm gonna flood just this bottom section right now. So I'm gonna show you what I was talking about kind of going back and forth. So my orange, I'm gonna cut just a teeny tiny bit bigger, just because we are working on a little bit of a larger area right here. And I know we went a little bit bigger already. I'm gonna go just a tiny bit more. Okay. So I'm gonna turn this. Again, remember what I said, that turn your cookies, whatever makes the most sense for you. You don't, have to keep them stationary like I do sometimes. Just going to push that icing up against my edge very gently, right along there. Okay, I'm going to fill that in a little bit, and then I'm just going to start going back and forth. So going back and forth, like I said, it helps. You're always working with that wet edge of the icing, and you don't have to worry too much about that icing edge drying out before you get back to it. And the icing recipe that we use for our kits and for classes is from the Cookie Curator, and it has a little bit more meringue powder in it, so it crusts up a little bit more quickly, which is perfect for class because we only have a limited amount of time and we need to be able to move on to the next step. So it works out perfectly. All right, so I'm just going to jiggle this icing back and forth. Remember, you don't want to see your cookie through your icing. Come back over here. Gently go along that edge where my icing is for the crust. Push that around. Turn that again. And remember, if you end up putting too much on accident, you just scrape that off with your scribe if it starts to go over the edge. It's not a big deal. And you can use your scribe to pull that icing to the edge if you haven't gone all the way to the edge. If you're pretty close but not all the way there. All right, I'm going to give this a little jiggle. A little bit of a bubble right here. If you can kind of see, it's really glossy over here, and where I just went in to go settle that icing, it's a little bit kind of, it almost looks matte, That's because it's already starting to dry. Okay, so just give that a little bit of a shake. And then we're going to push that one back out of the way. And we are going to bring our turkey back over. And I'm going to flood in those 2 feathers on the sides in orange. Okay, I'm going to be really careful now because I have 3 edges that have icing all the way up against them already. So I'm just going to gently push that icing over here. I want my icing to be touching on all 3 of these edges onto the other icing. Just on your outline, just like that. Just give that a jiggle. Shake that icing around. A little bit of a jiggle. Go and do the other side. I'm going to turn it for this one. Sometimes it's easier to work out, which is what I'm going to do right here. Just pull that icing around with your icing bag. And I know I keep repeating that, the jiggling and the wiggling, but that really is one of the tricks to getting your royal icing to smooth out as you're working with it. Like I said, especially when you're working with a bigger cookie, because that icing will crust up on you by the time you get back over to that beginning area. So you want to just get it to wiggle and jiggle and smooth out as much as possible so that you don't have to go back and do those areas. So I haven't had to touch any of these areas. I'm only doing the outer edge where I just finished. All right, I'll give him a little bit of a jiggle again. And then you are going to want to pause your video here if you need to let those cookies crust over a little bit more. We need our mashed potato bowl to crust over just a little bit more before we put our icing on, because we are using a thicker icing, because we're going to make those fluffy mashed potatoes on top, and then as well as our whipped cream on top of our slice of pie. Okay, so I'm going to push him out of the way and pause if you need to, but I'm going to bring over my pumpkin pie and I'm going to flood in this top area. Okay, and I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to start at this, actually I'm going to start kind of upside down, and I'm going to work into this corner right here. And because we let this icing crust up a little bit, we're going to get that divide right here, which gives us the appearance that our pie slice has dimension to it. Just pull that icing to the edge. And then I'm going to be really careful right here. Just pull it over. Just jiggle that icing. And then I'll fill in the rest of this section. All the way to the edge. Just jiggling that. And then I can use my scribe to gently pull that icing out. Just being careful not to hit the other part of my cookie that we just flooded a little bit before that. I'm going to gently poke my cookie and just give it a little bit of a jiggle. I don't want to poke too hard. And then I'll jiggle the surface of my icing to get that little tip of the icing to jiggle back down. There we go. You can pause right here if you need to. I'm going to gently push this one out of the way and bring my mashed potatoes back in. And I'm going to grab my white icing, but you also want to grab your Starburst. So before you even flood that, let's get our Starburst unwrapped for our pat of butter. And then I'm just going to set that to the side. So when I do my mashed potatoes, I take that back. Before we go to our mashed potatoes, let's go back to our turkey and let's do the eyes. So for the turkey and the eyes, you are going to need your white icing, and just pull that little tray over that you had of your little eyes. And we are going to use the eyes right now. So the reason I'm going back is because on my white icing, we are going to cut a larger hole to do the mashed potatoes and the whipped cream on the pie. So we're going to start with the eyes so that we can cut that hole smaller first. So that seam of your bag is up towards the top, the ceiling. Again, flatten the tip of your bag out and just cut. You're not going to cut a super small hole this time. I'll show you what I have. It's not super small like before when we are outlining. It's a little bit bigger. And we are going to fill in this area. So I'm going to turn my cookie so I can see on the opposite side of where that candy corn is sitting. And I'm just going to flood this in. And this icing is thicker, so you're really going to want to jiggle to get that icing to smooth out for you. Just jiggle it as you're going. And as soon as you are done with filling in the white of the eyes, we are going to grab those little black PME little sprinkles that we are using for the pupils of the eyes. So just jiggle that icing if you need to. And as long as you work quickly, you shouldn't have any problem with it jiggling down. Okay. I'm going to grab the little balls for the eyes, and I'm just going to drop it right where I want it. I'm going to grab the other one, same thing. And then, he looks a little crazy right now, right? You can just use your scribe to gently push it where you want it. And then just very gently just tap it down just a tiny bit so that it adheres into that icing. And then I'm going to push him away and we're going to go back to our mashed potatoes. So for our mashed potatoes, we are going to cut that hole larger. And we're going to go quite a bit larger. Okay, so here's my hole right now. I'm going to cut this probably like that much more. So that's a lot, right? You just want to make sure that the tip of that bag doesn't go into your cookie, your icing on your cookie. I'm going to squeeze out that white icing on my paper towel. And then, this is the fun part, I think. You're going to come over here. You can just turn your cookie upside down. You could turn it sideways. I'm going to go sideways. So if you're a lefty, just turn your cookie this way and then work up against that edge. I'm going to go like this. Okay. And I'm just going to go kind of, this one does not have to be perfect at all because mashed potatoes like in a bowl are not perfect, right? So I'm just creating swirls. Almost the same as when I was flooding my cookie when I was going back and forth to jiggle. But I'm not really jiggling this time. I'm just making little swirls so that they look like fluffy mashed potatoes. I don't know who is excited for mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving. I am. I love mashed potatoes. All right, and then you can just go back over the top of it and make it a little bit more fluffy. However you want. And then I'm going to grab my yellow icing back again. And I'm going to make, if you look at your picture, so it looks like the butter melted into the mashed potatoes. So to do that, I'm just going to create almost like a little outline of little drippy marks. Just like this. Kind of around where I'm going to put my butter splat. And then I'm going to go back in and just gently fill those in. And they don't have to be perfect because it's melted butter, right? And butter just kind of goes wherever it wants to go. Just like this. And then I will grab my little Starburst, my butter pat, and just set it right on top of that, kind of into the icing, like that. And we have our melted butter on our mashed potatoes. And if you want to, you can come over here and make it just a little bit more, give it a little bit more melty goodness of the butter. The trick to this is you don't want any sharp edges, because when butter melts, you don't have little sharp edges, right? You have little like drippies and oozies from the butter. And then we are going to grab our little pumpkin transfer. I'm going to put just a little bit of the orange icing on the back side of this, just like this. And I'm going to very gently just let this plop onto my cookie. I'm going to kind of see where I want it to be. And then just very gently, I'm going to get as close to the cookie without touching my fingers, touching the cookie or the transfer. I'm going to drop it. And then I'm going to very gently just push the top of it without pressing into my cookie. I'm just going to put it where I want it to go. And if you want to do this afterwards, you can wait till your cookie is fully dry and then go back and put this on if you're worried about pressing into your cookie. I'm just going to gently tap that just to adhere it to the top of that cookie, because my icing is still really wet. I don't want to push down too hard or it's going to push in and make little cracks on my bowl. So once you get your pumpkin on here, you have officially completed your first cookie. Whoop whoop! And your mashed potatoes are ready to go. So I'm just going to gently push this one out of the way. I'm going to bring my turkey back in. And I'm going to put that little piece along his nose or his beak. And I cannot remember for the life of me what that is called. So if you can remember, please tell me in the comments so I can remember what it's called. So if you look at your picture, it's just a little bit of a little droopy, I wish I knew what it was called right now. I'm drawing a total blank. I'm going to do this by just gently touching the edge of the candy corn right here. And I'm going to come down and just make a little droopy, almost kind of like a teardrop, but a limp tool drop that's kind of just droopy, just hanging there. And just gently wiggle that icing. And just like that, your turkey is done. All ready to go. So let's get our dessert done. Let's bring our pumpkin pie back over. And you are going to want to grab that little candy corn transfer that you have and your sprinkles again. So when I do this little area right here that's got those little bumps, that's where our whipped cream is going to go. So we're just going to create little, I'm going to show you on my paper, little kind of like a dollop back and forth. So I'm just going to do this. Okay, but you're also, you want to start kind of like this at the top with a little tail at the top. But I'm going to give it a lot more pressure so that we have more of that icing coming out for our whipped cream. All right, so when I do this, it's also kind of helpful. Let's actually do it this way. Instead of doing it the way I just showed you, going from the tip down, we're going to start from the bottom of the whipped cream and move up. So don't do that. We're going to do it like this. So I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm just going to give it a lot of pressure and just zigzag back up like this. And you can also do it if you want your icing to be a little bit flatter and more of a bigger circle. You can do that too. So just go back and forth like this, but kind of build up on itself. And then you can do a little dollop on top. All right, so I'm going to, again, my cookie's really wet, so I want to be really careful. Just going to go back and forth and give that little dollop. And then I'll grab my sprinkles and just gently get them on my whipped cream. And then I'm going, oh, and don't push it into your icing if you practice like that, like I did. I'm going to grab that little candy corn transfer, if I can pick it up, and just gently, you want to make sure your hands are dry because these are printed with some edible ink on my edible printer, but if your hands are wet, it's going to smear that ink, so just be really careful with that. Just gently push that into your icing like that, and you have officially completed your last cookie. Okay, so I just cleaned up and I accidentally set my other cookie on top of this one and it left little marks on it, but that's okay because it's still going to taste really good. But I want to show you guys something extra. So with your icing that you have left over, and if you have any bags left over, you could also do this with a Ziploc baggie. If you accidentally used all your bags, you would just put it into a Ziploc and just snip off the corner just like you do with the edge of the piping bags. But I want to give you something a little bit extra to do if you want a little bit of a challenge. So once your cookies are crusted over and dry, they don't have to be 100% dry, but just enough to where your icing, your outline won't flood into your cookie. You can go back around and you can outline these cookies. And that gives them a little bit more of a finished look. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And some of my icing bags I don't even need to rebag because we kept the holes so small. So I'm going to start first with my turkey. I'm going to bring him back over very gently. Let me zoom back in for you. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, so I'm just going to outline that top part, that top feather. So I'm just going to tap down right here. I'm just going to follow the outline of where I flooded. Almost exactly the same as what you did when we first outlined our cookie. And then I'm going to grab my orange and I'm going to do the same thing to those areas. But instead of coming in and out, I'm just going to start from the top and then I'll go in on this side over here. Just like that. Bring that around. Just gently, when you're doing this, you barely want to even tap down because my icing is wet. That's why I'm telling you guys to wait a little bit. But just gently let that icing touch your cookie if it's still wet, because you don't want to tap down onto the cookie like we do when we're outlining, because it will make an indent in your cookie. All right, and then I'm going to do this one. I'm just going to tap it. Come around, tap down. Just like that. All right, then I'm going to go back in, and you can do this first if you want to also, if you're more comfortable, instead of having to attach kind of like the feathers that we just did. But I'm just going to tap right here at that yellow, and this icing bag was cut a little bit bigger, but I think it looks okay for this. I'm just going to follow this edge of my turkey. I'm going to tap down gently. I'm going to lift up. I'm going to come back around, and that little loop that we had earlier, I'm going to make that little loop just like that, and then keep coming around till I get down here, and then I'm just going to pull it around just like we did when we outlined. I'm going to straighten my outline out just a tiny bit down here. All right, and then I'm going to push him out of the way. I'm going to grab my mashed potatoes. And for the mashed potatoes, I'm not going to outline this inner part of the bowl. I'm only going to do this bottom edge, and then I'm not going to go back with that crimson color and do it either. I'm just going to do this outer edge, up towards the top. And then on the bowl, I'm going to do this edge right here down, and then this edge over here down. And then I'm going to do the top part of the bowl. So right along the edges of those mashed potatoes. And if your line breaks, that's okay. Just go ahead and reconnect it right there and it'll melt into itself, just like that. And keep that separate. But if you do want to do that little separation line, we can do that too. So I'll show you how to do it. And this is almost just like our practice sheet, right? So we're going to go slow and just direct that icing where to go. So icing lines in the details when you go back over things on a cookie are really good because they can help cover something up. And remember, if you mess up, you can always fix it by adding more icing, or you can add a decoration like your little pumpkin. I'm going to grab this one, our pumpkin pie slice, back over. And I'm going to outline just the outer edges first of our pie slice. And I'll show you our Christmas cookie set. Don't forget that. I'm going to show that to you. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom. Just tap down, and I'm going to come straight across the bottom part of the pie and come up and around and tap down, because we have kind of a little bit of a corner right there, but not a big one. Just to give it that curve. Tap down, and then I'll go around and do our little slice, the crust. Connect these, and then come down here and come all the way down and around, like that. Okay. And then I'm not going to do anything to our pie slice on the inside. I'm only going to do this outer edge. I'm going to clean my icing bag off. So I'm going to start just right here, come over and tap down, and then just follow that edge like that. So here we have our set for Thanksgiving, our Gobble Till You Wobble little set. I hope you guys had so much fun decorating, and I hope you try to do some of these outlines on the cookies, because that's the next step to getting your cookies up to the next level. All right, and if you guys want to save these, don't go anywhere yet because I'm going to show you our Christmas cookies, but if you want to save these and give these away, you want to leave them on your counter somewhere undisturbed where they have airflow. You don't want to, you don't want to cover them up because it will hinder the drying process. You want to just leave them uncovered so that they can crust over. If you are going to keep them and eat them yourself, I feel like the best time to eat them is about an hour after you decorate. The top is crusted over, so it's a little crusty, but the inside is still like nice and soft, and they're perfect. So if you want to give them away again, you want to let them dry overnight until about this time tomorrow when you you finish decorating. So this time, at the same time tomorrow, and then you can put them in little Ziploc baggies and gift them to somebody if you want to do that.